Father inscribed the name of a healthy, husky boy in the family Bible. Humble beginnings, but not poor. The Edison children were reared on good food and the good book. They were all good, hard, common-sense kids, said the neighbors, except for young Tom. They called him the curious boy, meaning he had too much curiosity about things. When he was 5, they found him sitting on some duck eggs to see if he could hatch them. It was possibly his first experiment. It was not successful. When the family moved to Port Huron, Michigan, the curious boy started school. He exasperated his teacher. The boy is backward, the teacher complained. All he does is ask questions. Nonsense, said the boy's mother. I'll teach you myself. And she did. Her method was reading, writing, and arithmetic. And then she simply encouraged him to read, read, read. The more he read, the more his curiosity grew. By the time he was 12, he wanted to know what the whole wide world was about. So he decided to go into business. 1859, the great railroads were beginning to crisscross America. Any 12-year-old boy would naturally go down to the railroad station to seek his fortune. Tom Edison talked the Grand Trunk Railway into giving him the job of selling candy and newspapers on the daily run from Port Huron to Detroit. He also talked the conductor into giving him a corner of the baggage car. In this corner, he set up a chemical laboratory. His curiosity didn't stop at chemistry. He got interested in printing when he was 14. So he set up his own printing press and started the first newspaper ever published on a railroad train, anytime, anywhere. The Weekly Herald, published by A for Al, as he was called, Edison, was only a single sheet affair, but he crammed it with general information and gossip. Local and international news. Business facts and figures. Vital statistics. Philosophy. Reason, justice, and equity never had weight enough on the face of the earth to govern the councils of men. But at the height of his success as chemist, candy butcher, publisher, philosopher, 2 accidents occurred. First, he became partially deaf.
Deafness drove me to reading. My refuge was the Detroit Public Library. I didn't read a few books. I read the library.
And he learned how to operate a telegraph ticker. The second accident occurred when one day his chemical jars broke open and set fire to the baggage car. The conductor put him off the train together with all his chemicals and his curiosity. He was 16 years old now, an unemployed candy butcher and newspaper publisher. But he'd also learned how to send and receive messages over the telegraph ticker. In 1864, he became a wandering telegraph operator, the fastest operator that ever came down the pike, also the most restless. Couldn't stay in one place for long. For 4 years, he ticked his way across the country, a kind of long-haired hobo, always tinkering with wires and things, but gathering no moss, making no money.
No matter what I may do, I reap nothing but trouble and the blues. It is all I can do to keep the wolf from the door.
But he was working harder than he was worrying, and he invented the universal stock ticker, his first major invention. Western Union paid him $40,000 for it. He took the money and invested in a dream. All during the hobo years, he had dreamed of building a laboratory. And finally, in 1876, he settled in the little town of Menlo Park, New Jersey. To his home there, he took his young bride, Mary Stillwell Edison. Close by the house, the main laboratory building was connected to the outside world by telegraph wires. The chemistry lab was the little candy butcher's dream come true. He filled his lab with the best technicians and the best machines money could buy. He was the first man to conceive of an invention factory, a hive of specialists on a belt line. At the top of the line was the old man, as they called him even then, supplying the ideas and the inspiration. He announced to the world,
"I produce a minor invention every month and a major one every 6 months."
It was no idle boast, and the invention started pouring out of Menlo Park. To his deafness, he attributed one of his early contributions.
When Bell first worked out his telephone idea, I tried it, and the sound which came through the instrument was so weak I couldn't hear it. I started to develop it and kept on until the sounds were audible to me. My improvement, the carbon transmitter, made the telephone possible.
The repeating telegraph was a machine which automatically took down telegraph messages for relay at high speed. It consisted of a piece of thick paper which spun around a blunt needle, which made dot and dash indentations on the paper. One day, Edison was tinkering with the machine. The paper disc started spinning too rapidly, and through his deafness, he heard a strange sound.
If I could record the action of the point and then send the point over the same surface again, I saw no reason why the thing...
Crucy, his chief machinist, made the model for a total cost of $18. A group of assistants gathered around the old man's desk. None of them knew what the fantastic-looking thing was supposed to do. They stood silently while Edison took a piece of tinfoil, inserted a mouthpiece on the contraption, and then, to everyone's astonishment, started reciting these momentous words.
Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. I made a bet of 15 cigars that the machine would talk back to me. Mary had a little lamb, his face was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
He won the bet. What should he call it? Telephone? Telegraph? He named it the phonograph. It became the sensation of the day and age. The 31-year-old inventor was invited to the White House to demonstrate his machine for President Hayes. Never in the whole history of science and invention had there been anything like this, a machine that talked, and the world clamored to listen to it. In restaurants and saloons and penny arcades, the first jukeboxes were installed. And while the words and music poured into every ear, the name of Edison was on every tongue. A philosopher of the time said it was the era of the nickel in the slot machine.
Every Saturday, Willie got his pay, then he'd call for Nell.
It was always Mr. Edison's own favorite invention. He was always bubbling over with new ideas for it, new applications.
On Nellie's little hat, there was...
He had hoped the little box would be a great educational device, recording the Washingtons and Lincolns for posterity. But what the public wanted from it was entertainment. And the great names of the entertainment world hastened to oblige. Rachmaninoff, Metzenauer, Albert Spaulding, and even Sybil Sanderson Fagan, the whistling artist. And as the years went by, they trooped in and out of Edison's recording rooms. The opera singers and the banjo players and the bird imitators and the tellers of jokes. And the records poured forth, hundreds of them, thousands, hundreds of thousands. From the needle that scratched the tinfoil, $1 million industry was born. Shortly after the world had seen the wizardry of the invention of the phonograph, the Wizard of Menlo Park started a fresh notebook. It was the first of many on a new subject.
The object of this invention is to devise an electric lamp, which shall admit of being worked in great numbers on one electrical circuit.
The invention of the phonograph had been all Edison, but when he turned his luminous curiosity on the problem of making an electric light, he was moving into a field where many others were working. The first thing Edison did was to learn everything he could about the subject. He came to the crux of the problem. 1. If you heat certain materials by electricity, they give off light. 2. If you heat these materials in a vacuum, they last much longer. So he told his glass blowers in the invention factory to make him some glass bulbs. This would be his vacuum, in which he would heat something by electricity. Heat what? What would glow with a light that was continuous and bright and easy on the eyes? Now the laboratory became his home.